Right. I was building I'm church warden for one of our local churches, and I was building a handicap access ramp to allow people to get up to the altar to take communion and to get back again. And the issue is that currently people struggle with walkers and things like that, and there are steps, and so it means someone else has to accompany them. And this was an idea I had. Being a listed building, it has to be a removable structure. Otherwise, you require the Victorian Society's approval, and it's a grade 1 listed building, so it becomes a nightmare. So I had to build the ramp out of wood, and when I'd finished the ramp, I was left worrying. We were going to have a side rail, but actually I felt that we needed a permanent rail to stop people falling off the edge of the ramp, even though it's quite wide. So I built a banister on it, and I was doing the last cut of the newel post, which is the big post at the end for the banister. Everything else had been done. Mm-hmm. And just as I pulled the saw down, I had a circular saw, I pulled it down, and my sweatshirt had my arm too close, and the sweatshirt, the blade caught just a tiny bit of the sweatshirt, and then just pulled my arm under the blade, and it was off. And it was literally, it went through my arm a lot quicker than it ever went through the wood, I can tell you. And the crew came in, and they gave me 20 mil of morphine that didn't touch the sides of the pain. The next morning I woke up about 8 o'clock in the morning, and I had this big blanket with a blower at the end of the bed, blowing hot air up, but I couldn't see whether I had an arm or not. And so I made a mental decision that if I didn't have an arm, that I was not going to let my injury define me. I was going to define my injury. And if I did have an arm, wow. A couple of days later, about a day and a half, 2 days later, Gareth Price came in, and they had to have a look and look at whether the dressing needed changing. And he asked me, do you want to see your injury? And so I thought, I've got to look at this because I'm going to be living with it for a long time. And when I looked at it, it was absolutely horrible. I mean, if you imagine there, so I cut there, but they had to open me up from the middle of the hand all the way down to get all the tendons and muscles so they could sew them all together again. But I had a triangle from basically the palm of my hand that came out to about 12 centimeters wide with a skin graft over it. And it was just red and horrible. And I looked at it and I thought to myself, that's not pretty. It's not always going to be that bad. And it's still me. And I've still got a hand. And again, it's me defining the injury, not letting it define me. And that was the best thing that I did. So it was very positive and powerful thing to make me look at it and accept it. Something else that was very positive for me was I was told that I had to love my hand. You've got to touch it and you've got to love it. Having used my power tools to cut my arm off, I was then doing some work at my mother's house with a jigsaw, which hit a nail and jumped out and went through my thumb. And I didn't feel a thing. So some positive news. You can hurt yourself and it doesn't hurt. The vicar wanted to burn the ramp because he was so upset by the whole incident. And I literally said, this has been blood, sweat and tears over my dead body, is that ramp going? And I went back and finished it off, albeit with a lot of help from my wife, because I was doing everything one-handed. You don't particularly notice the improvements until you go and see somebody and you realize that last week when you saw them, you couldn't do that. And this week you can. And I remember the first time I could touch my fingers together, I actually cried. And she gave me a roll of tape to pick up. And it was the first time I could actually pick something up on my own. it defines everything about you, because it's when you don't have your hand, just everything that you think you can do, like eating, you can't eat. You have to have a fork or a spoon in the other hand and cut things. And so learning to hold a fork and a knife, or a fork and a spoon and things, and feed myself. The first time I could feed myself again was a huge milestone for myself. When they saw me and saw how much movement I had, and this was months and months ago, the guy said, I didn't think you'd ever get that much movement back, ever, 2 or 3 years down the line. And it's just like, just watch this space. But everybody, all the surgeons, the doctors, the nurses, everybody's been just so genuinely concerned and kind and caring and wanting me to do well. It's just a total privilege to have been operated on by these people who've literally saved my life. Well, saved my arm, I will say. And the scar around the arm, you can virtually hardly see at all the way around. I mean, the job that was done, I can see from here, but it's virtually invisible. And it's on the inside, so you can't see it. So most people don't even know I've had anything done to me. My son, when he heard that I'd done this, sent me high fives, which appealed to my sense of humor.